Joining me now is Danny Rossi, who provides the vocals on a great song, Light Me Up, parentheses, Enjoy the Ride, as part of a project called The Outliars. Welcome to the show, Danny. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me, dude. Appreciate it.
Before we talk about the song and the outliers and get ready for me to ask the question I'm sure everybody asks, which is about the spelling of the band, but that's later. I wanted to start off because I was reading your bio online and you grew up in Montreal, and I guess you're first generation Canadian, and your Italian parents are as Italian as you can get. Like they moved to Canada from Italy, right?
Yep, they sure did.
So, was there music in your family history? You know, back in the old country, as they say, or was this not something that they had in mind for their son? Or
um, I don't think they had it in mind for me at all, really. I mean, one of my uncles, I guess that's probably why I got into music. One of my uncles played guitar. He was in bands since he was young, and he still plays guitar to this day, and he's in his 60s, man. And I just love watching him
wow,
go. It's a different style of music than I listen to, but still you can
sure,
appreciate a great musician. And yeah, it was always there. Christmas, having like family sing-alongs, and as a kid, you're embarrassed. Really, says, "Oh my God, this is my family. They're not cool." But I think that's what actually made me like music and really get into it. And at the time, like you're a little kid, you don't really know much, and they're singing along to Beatles songs, and you're like, this is not like Sesame Street music that I'm watching as a kid. But
yeah,
then you grow older, and you're like, oh my God, the Beatles are the best. The
yeah.
melodies and the lyrics. You're like, wow, okay. I think that's where it all started for me personally. But no, definitely. Besides my uncle, really not in the family per se as like a history of musicians. No.
Right, in terms of as a profession, but it sounds like music was certainly always around, and I think it's something like the Beatles is going to make a pretty big impression on any kid, just because there's so many different sounds in like a single Beatles song, just like what is all that, and I can imagine,
Oh yeah.
really you're getting caught up by it. What was the point for you when you decided that like, oh, I think I'd like to try and do that? Were you saying like just singing with the family, or you're saying more that was like, oh no, the family will sing, I'm just going to sit here in the corner and listen, I don't actually want to sing?
Yeah, no, I let the family do that. Like I said, I was embarrassed till I was
Yeah,
older.
sure.
The when I realized, and I love this question because, and I love telling people this story, is I was probably about 13 years old, and so I have an older brother, and we both have cousins just about the same age. So my brother would hang out with the older cousin, and I would hang out with the cousin my age. And my older cousin, we're over at their place, and he's like, "You gotta watch this video." And we're like, "Okay." So my brother, who was not really into the rock music as much as I am, we sit down and he puts on Motley Crue Uncensored. And for anybody who's watched this videotape,
Yeah,
you've got Vince Neil riding up and down the Sunset Strip in a limo, and then it just switches. The back of the limo is an exposed outdoor hot tub, and he's got two hot blondes in there with him, and he's like
yeah.
this doing the interview, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do that. you
Yeah,
know?
right, exactly. And you know what? There was there kind of was nobody cooler than Motley Crue at that point. It looked like the just all the guys. Mick Mars was
Oh
kind
yeah,
of like he was almost like the kind of the Easter Island statue off on the side. He's like, yeah, whatever you guys are doing, that's fine. But everybody else was so
yeah,
crazy. And yeah, it always look. If I remember that Motley Crue Uncensored video, and
yeah,
everybody started putting them out. There was like Kiss Exposed came out a little bit after that.
yeah, yeah,
Skid
yeah.
Row had one, and yeah, I mean everybody had the video of like, well, look how we party, and yeah, I can see that definitely being an inspiration. So I'm trying to think at what point. That was before Dr. Feelgood, I think, right? So was that the Girls, 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 or
That was right before Girls, 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 if
yeah,
I
so it's after
remember
Theater of
correctly.
Pain. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's going to probably make them a pretty early influence on you. And, when we were talking before we got started, you said you had an award for Motley Crue on the wall behind you. So that tells me that they were a pretty big influence for you. And what is the award that you have? And by the way, do they know that you have it, or did it fall off the back of a truck, or as they say?
Okay, so it's not the original award.
Oh,
These
okay.
are it's a certified
Sure.
it's a certified replica with an authenticity certificate, blah blah blah, commemorating the gold when they reach gold status for Dr. Feelgood. I say that.
Very cool.
So
Yeah.
for me, being a Motley Crue fan, somebody my fiance actually wanted to buy me a great Christmas gift a few years ago, and she hit it right on the money. I was like, I took everything down. I put that up. It's like, let's go. This has got to go up on my wall.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. Yeah, it is great when you can get a hold of those things. And yeah, it's so in terms of, just sort of the lifestyle, but obviously enjoying the music too. At what point do you start doing anything musical? Do you start just singing for fun? Do you pick up an instrument or two? How does your sort of evolution as a musician begin?
For me personally, so I watched this uncensored video, and I am mesmerized because you're a 13-year-old discovering who you are and where to go in life. I just become immediately obsessed with Motley Crue, and this is what I want to listen to. It's edgy, it's different than everything else I've heard. You don't really hear it on mainstream radio, and in Montreal we're so limited. We have one rock station, so if it's not mainstream rock, they don't play much of it. So you don't get to hear stuff like Motley Crue on a regular basis. And so I'm immediately like back cataloging and listening to all their stuff, and like one album wilder than the other, and I'm totally obsessed. I gotta and my favorite guy is Nikki Sixx, and I gotta play bass. I want to play bass, do backup vocals, and just stand cool and just like carry my bass real low, and
Right.
and write songs because I like to think I'm a creative person, and that was my thing. I just wanted to write songs, play bass, and do backup vocals. Then for the lack of finding a singer, I was kind of playing bass, which I just thought I was going to be good overnight, so I wasn't really trying hard enough. But
Sure.
I was like, it's bass, it's got less strings, shouldn't this be easy? yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started singing a little bit because we couldn't find a singer when you're getting together with friends trying to start a band. So then I was like, well, you know what? I'm a hell of a lot better singing than I am playing bass here. This is something. Maybe I can get even better at this if I put down the bass and just concentrate, because it's easier to find a bass player, and I'm not that good at it, so might as well. And
Right.
it went from there. And then okay, you're in bands, and like we need you to play a bit of guitar in this song, because you're doing covers, you're starting out. So I pick up a guitar, and it's like, okay, just strum a chord. Like that's what I still like to do that to this day. I don't want to do a solo. I just want to look cool with a guitar in my hands.
Yeah. What was I always find it interesting to talk to musicians. What was the first concert you ever went to? And maybe that wasn't even like a big moment, because sometimes your parents drag you to something or whatever. But what was the first live music you saw? And then if it wasn't rock music, what was the first like rock concert you went to?
I do believe the first real concert I went to, and again, I was young. My parents were very weary, being of Italian descent. Uh,
Sure.
I begged. I begged and begged, and they let me go to Guns N' Roses Metallica. Yeah,
Wow.
Guns N' Roses Metallica. Um, and again, this is like what, I'm maybe 14 years old, and I go to Guns N' Roses Metallica here in Montreal. And for people who don't know, it's all out riot broke out. First, James
Yeah.
Hetfield gets burnt by stepping. He was in the pyro wasn't marked, and he got burnt. So Metallica cuts their set short after like 35 minutes. Guns
Yeah.
N' Roses can come out, save the day, but Axl Rose, back in those days, he was not feeling it, and he wasn't in the mood. Slammed his mic down left, and the place is rioting.
Yeah.
But we stood back. I was with my cousin and then a friend, and we stood back and we just watched everything. And when the fires started coming up to the upper levels, we were like, yeah, okay, time to go. We get outside, and it's worse. There's cop cars upside down and on fire, and we're
Wow.
like, okay, let's just shoot. And we don't live far from the Olympic Stadium here, so we were just like, let's get the heck out of here. And we just like we motored and we just went home.
You know that I remember that. You know, it's funny because when you said Montreal and you said Guns N' Roses and Metallica, you know, that's almost 30 years ago. I didn't forget. I remember that. I remember MTV News covering that and seeing some footage of it. And you know that tour, that's the Use Your Illusion tour.
Yeah,
There's a couple of those for Axl. There was an infamous incident in St.
yeah,
Louis, and they didn't come back to St. Louis until a couple years ago. After that, like
yeah,
that was that long until they had them back. And that's the crazy thing, you know. See what you know. Becoming an adult really changes everything. Guns N' Roses, you know, this tour that they've been doing for the last few years, which is going to start up again soon. They're always on time, and you know they play like 3.5 hours, and it's like what you know what happened to the old days where it was like I remember the first time I saw them. Soundgarden opened at Madison Square Garden in New York, and the ticket said around 8 o'clock because they weren't promising anything. It literally said around 8 o'clock because, and I think they
that's
went on
great.
at 10, you know, which you know is whatever. But man, that Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and I don't know about in Montreal, but when I saw it in New Jersey, Faith No More opened. That was such
Yeah,
a I don't you know now that I've gotten older I don't love huge stadium shows, but that's always the number one at the top of my list when I think about giant stadium shows. You know, getting to see
yeah.
you know Faith No More, the sun's still out, but they're a great band, and then you know then Metallica, then Guns N' Roses. So I feel bad that you got deprived of what was a great concert, and you know I guess your life was in danger at one point.
Yeah, it could have been in danger had we stuck around a little longer.
Yeah.
You know, there was a fire breaking out on the upper balcony, and then we saw the security guard get thrown into the pile of chairs on the floor, and
Whew.
then chairs being thrown on top. And I look at my cousin and like yeah, let's go, man. Like it's like I
And
don't feel like
and
drinking except for
that
getting
was at
arrested.
Olympic
You know,
Stadium.
yeah, the Olympic Stadium in Montreal.
Yeah, you know, obviously it has to be a long time ago. As I referenced, I'm from New York. Some friends and we did a road trip. It just the way that it broke down. The Blue Jays were playing the Yankees for 2 games, and then 2 days later the Expos were playing the Mets. So we drove up to Toronto and then drove across, and you know it was I think it was either the last or the second to last season the Expos were there, and just talking to the fans, and it was you know look I think it was like 8,000 people were there at the baseball game, but the people who were there were just so excited and they were so passionate about it, and the food was amazing, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
just this huge. You know, I had never seen baseball in an arena that size. Like the whole upper deck was locked off, but it was such a I don't know. I always feel like it's a good way to get to know people in a town, whether you go to a sporting event or a concert. If you actually talk to the people there, you know, it's it was a beautiful city, and sort of jealous that you get to grow up somewhere like that. You know, I'm sure that there was a lot, you know, a lot of opportunity, just a lot that you were exposed to growing up somewhere, just with the, you know, the culture, the bilingual nature of the city. Yeah, it's I'm just sort of remembering that I had such a great time that weekend that we went to Montreal, and you know I know that that people feel like if they had moved the Expos to somewhere that was more downtown, they might have been able to keep them. But at least that's what the people I talked to said. They were really hoping that they could have gotten something. But do they still hold events at Olympic Stadium? I mean, Olympic Stadium it's exactly the same age I am because it opened for those Olympics in '76, and I'm 45 now. Do they still? I
Yeah.
mean, obviously not during COVID, but do they still hold events there at Olympic
Yeah,
Stadium?
there's always events there. Like I think I don't know. I'm a bit out of touch. I know they
Yeah,
used
that's
to have
okay.
like car shows and stuff like that, or
Oh,
Harley
see.
shows, and as for concerts, no, because I think I can't recall concerts there
Yeah,
because
maybe after Guns N' Roses, they were like, all right, we're not doing that anymore.
yeah, it could be,
Well,
but it was but you know they ended up building a new forum for for the hockey team, which was you know state of the art at the time. So
yeah.
that's probably why like it steered away, and the sound was never the best at the stadium because of its weird kind of half open concept with a retractable roof or whatever it
Oh,
was.
yeah.
Like the delay sometimes by the time it got to the back of the stadium, it was notoriously known. When Guns N' Roses came, I think they had already like upgraded that sound system, but it
Sure.
still wasn't spectacular.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it, and especially a huge indoor venue like that. Well, Danny, and I know that in Canada, I think that you're well known as being the singer of a band called One, and I think that just sort of reading about that. I wanted to ask an actual Canadian artist because from afar we hear it down here. We know that there's that Canadian culture law that they have there, where I think I can see the huge positive of it is that you give a leg up to Canadian artists there on radio and television. And it look, obviously sometimes it translates across the border, but for every band like Rush that is also huge around the world, I always point to the example. My friend from Canada, he lives in Medicine Hat now. He's a huge Tragically Hip fan, and I don't really know that band other than the fact that Dan Aykroyd had them on Saturday Night Live when he guest hosted. But I know that they were huge up there, and I know that they recently they finished their run, and I know that the singer passed away. But I know that's a kind of an example of a band that's just huge there that I think in the US people don't really know, and there's plenty of other examples of that. Is it helpful, obviously, for artists in Canada though, that they're like, yeah, we're going to help out our own so that our culture, our arts don't just become taken over by the United States?
It's kind of a difficult question to answer for me. We're in Quebec,
Okay.
which is mainly a French-speaking province. So,
Sure.
Being in the music industry for years now, we often hear of kind of like little things. I don't know if there's any truth to it, but I'm going to say it anyways. You're from Quebec, and the rest of Canada doesn't give a crap about you because you're from Quebec, even though you're English speaking and write English music. Quebec doesn't care about you because we're in a French province and
Right.
you're English speaking. So with the last band, we were like, well, screw this. We'll just go to the States and try and go the route of like Nickelback and Sum 41. Let's try and get an American label behind us because there's nothing up here. Right. We didn't look too much into it. So, I mean, I said, I don't know if there's any validity to the statement, but that's how we did it.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that obviously, you hear about, there's all these bands that, you have the ones that cross over. Obviously, Loverboy have a couple of huge hits in the '80s, and Bryan Adams. But there's always all these other bands, like Triumph and Anvil, and some others that you hear about, like April Wine. But then you have like Bachman Turner Overdrive. So there's always the examples. But I hadn't really thought about that. Is there pressure within Quebec? Is there any pressure to like, well, why are you singing in English, or why are you not doing an English version of a song and a French version? Is there pressure to do that, or is it, do they not look at it that way there in Quebec?
I don't think there's any pressure to do anything. I mean, as an artist, I mean, what are they going to tell you? No, you can't play that. No, I'm an artist.
Sure.
That's what I'm going to do. Like,
yeah.
So I'm Italian. So I should be singing in Italian in Quebec? Like, no, it doesn't make. Like, Like, I don't think there's any pressure. But does it change anything? Yeah, I think it does. It definitely affects the whole thing.
Right.
The language barrier. Does affect.
So a Quebec band might not get played in Ontario or British Columbia. Is it just sort of, they're gonna, they might just play some, I guess just the native English speakers. Is it really that divided in terms of you might get played on the radio in Montreal? You mentioned that there was the one rock station, but getting a leg up in the rest of the country, that's not always necessarily the case.
Yeah, I don't know to what extent,
sure.
But if the song is in French, is the rest of Canada going to play it? Maybe in a small French-speaking community somewhere else,
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah, no, exactly. But obviously, your music was in English, and I'm sure that you definitely had some opportunities there. Talk a little bit about just some of the big moments in your career, whether it's getting to play in a specific venue or opening for a band that you always liked. What were some of those earlier moments in your career where you're like, wow, I can't believe that I'm doing this in this place or with this band, or maybe somebody joins you up on stage as a guest, anything like that?
The first big moment for me personally was it was one of my first tours. It was like, you leave Canada, you're hoofing it in a van or a truck, whatever we had at the time, and we actually, because of a previous tour, somebody had mentioned. So basically, we ended up playing for the U.S. military, which was an honor, because at one of our shows in, like, I think Jacksonville, Florida, or something like that, if I'm not mistaken, there was a Marine that came to see us, or I think it was a Marine, I could be mistaken. And then he tells the USO, um, next time you guys have an event for the soldiers, you guys should contact them. They're amazing. So they contacted us, and we happened to be on tour. So we just rerouted a little bit. There wasn't too much of a detour because we were in that area pretty much. And we were playing outside, to like 5,000 people. Like, we're just a band starting out, trying to get our legs playing little bars and tiny clubs. And now there's 5,000 people who are just so happy that we came to play for them, because it was a military appreciation day, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
and
sure. Yeah.
and they're giving us the tour of the compound. They gave us the goodie bags that only soldiers get, overseas when they're, in at war, to remind them of home, like a Reader's Digest, some beef jerky, powdered Gatorade stuff, to make yourself Gatorade,
Yeah.
a razor kit, and like I never opened it. I still have it packed in a box. I didn't eat the beef jerky. I just left it sealed. I said, I want to keep this as they gave it to me, because that was one of the biggest honors I've ever had. They gave me something a U.S. soldier gets when they're
Yeah.
overseas fighting for the freedom of their country. And I was like, I was just shocked, and just like my jaw was like open. I can't believe they're giving me this.
Yeah, and I can imagine that that's a great crowd to play for, because it is so much larger than when you're used to playing at that point. But they're just so glad that even though it was domestically here in the United States, just the fact that you're taking the time to play for them, I think that's it's great. I've always heard from comedians and musicians who will do those tours and visit troops like in the Middle East and stuff, that those are always like the best crowds, because you went that far out of your way. But I think it's got to be similar, the same mindset. It's like, they're just playing for us. So that must have been great. Well, I do want to talk about the reason why we got you here. I could talk to you about music and all this stuff all the time, but let's talk about Light Me Up, Enjoy the Ride, which I
Sure.
challenge our audience to listen to that song right after this interview, and then not walk around the rest of the day with Light Me Up in your head over and over again, which is what happened to me. Now, the video kind of tells the story, and for our video listeners, I can show the video, but we can't play the audio because of the way that YouTube works. That's when they get angry. But I do want you to kind of tell the story about it and how it all came about. And to me, it's interesting because you're basically it seems like you're the last person kind of to be involved in the project. They kind of, but the way it came together during sort of quarantine, I think, is really interesting. So I wanted you to take the time to explain to our audience how this happened.
Okay, so John, there's the guitar player. I've known him since college, and then a few years later, he's actually a great videographer too. He filmed my very first music video, filmed it, edited it, did everything, and we were always cool. Then after that, we had done some shows together. He had his blues band, and we had our rock band, and we were always cool with each other, And I said, in college, we used to talk music all the time between classes. So John writes this riff, and he likes it. It's a bit different than, let's say, his usual blues stuff and his solo work and whatnot. So he sends it to Max, who's also had some very good success with two of his former bands. And Max added a drum track, but he's like, "Do you mind if I snip it up and change the production of it? rearrange it. And so John's like, yeah, man, what do you think is gonna work? So the two of them are like, wow, this is really good now. So they need bass. So John calls up his friend Je, and Je adds a bass line. Now he's like, this is really good. Let's see if somebody has lyrics and melody for it. So they actually called up Brandon, who's playing organ on the song. Brandon's a bit younger than the rest of us, and he's like, I don't really feel I can't really come up with ideas of lyric and melody for this style of music. He goes, can I add organ? He goes, I feel like organ. It's an old school bluesy rock song. Johnny's like, why not try it? So the organ comes in. So this is a few months later. Now they've all done all the work. A few months later, like I'm getting up in the morning, headed out, and I get a message from John. And he's like, hey, dude, how's it going, man? He goes, are you still with your band? He goes, what are you doing? Are you still singing? I'm like, nah, dude, I've been trying to put together some musical projects, but like musicians are weird dudes, sometimes. So, so
Sure
I was
they
kind of
are.
having yeah, it's like some more than you think, though, I swear. So I'm like, he's like, you want to try and sing on this song, or if you have any ideas? He goes, if not, no hard feelings. And I mean, I put it on, and I felt right away, I'm like, wow, like something about this song right away, it hit me. I loved it. And that's how I like music. If it's not good, it's like, okay, you want to write lyrics for this song we're recording on our album? All right, lyrics and melody. Okay, sure. But if it doesn't get me, it's not going to get the best of me.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I literally just listened to that song all day. That whole day, I just kept listening over and over. Within like 2-3 hours, I had the chorus going, and I'm writing stuff like in my phone. I'm doing it in the notes on my iPhone. It's like just like typing it all small,
Sure.
while listening to it at the same time. And I'm like, okay. And I felt I had something going, but you never know for sure till you listen to it back. A few hours later, I had just about everything written. I get home, I like literally just shovel food in my mouth so I can just close myself up in a room where I have my crappy little equipment to just record ideas, because I'm no
Right.
engineer. I go to a studio. I go to a studio and record properly, but to get ideas down. So I start recording. The chorus is working for me. I'm liking it. I go, okay, this is great, my opinion. But the verses weren't working. So I messaged John. I go, look, I got a chorus. I go, I'm not going to send you anything. I go, give me a few more days. I go, I got to work on these verses. And so I just changed my whole mindset, completely changed the verses and how I thought. And at the same time, you're coming up with all the stuff. You kind of need the story too, whether it's going to be vague or obvious. Like I like to, write about something and not just throw words in the air. So 2-3 days later, I come up with an idea for the verses. I'm like, okay, I think I like this. I record it, send it to John. I go, what do you think? He doesn't even answer back. He calls me. He's like, dude, this is great. This is what I wanted for this song. And he's like happy. So like I'm getting excited too. Like we're like little girls, like hey, like little school girls, all excited,
Sure.
to see each other again. And I'm like, okay, dude, I go, but I got to tell you, I don't do anything half-assed. I go, people ask me to join their projects and their cover bands, and I'm not interested. I like doing things professionally. So if you want to do this, we're going to studio. I record it properly, and that includes mixing and mastering. And he was in agreement with me because that's how he does stuff. He likes everything professional and done properly. So then but before that, he's like, hey, he sends back like 2 days later. He goes, what about these ideas? And so that repeat of the song, like light me up all the time, that was his idea.
Okay.
I had it a little more simple, and then he puts that in, like it's blowing me away. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't think of that. That's like amazing. So it came together as just this collaboration of different artists and all different musical backgrounds, because that was the whole idea he had. I want to see what happens when I put 5 musicians, well, or let's say 3, 4, 5 from different musical backgrounds together, and what it's going to give as an end result. And so John, who was very blues, Max, who was more well, his background is heavy metal, but not like that, just heavy
Yeah.
metal. JE, who's just, I guess, just regular rock. Brandon, who's more into pop rock, and myself, who was just into heavy rock. So we put all that together, and it kind of, we just all like the end result.
Yeah, and it's a great song, and it has a few different kind of feels to it. And you made the point about the organ, and having that kind of keyboard sound to it. It doesn't make it sound like it is an old song in a dated way, but it gives you that feel, like I don't know, like Exile on Main Street, like you have like those songs with the organ, the keyboard in there, and it gives it kind of it's got a modern feel, but it's got a modern sound, but it's got sort of the older feel, and it's great. And in terms of writing the lyrics, did you in your head did you think of what the perfect crime was, or you just like, I'm just going to say it's a perfect crime, or is there clearly a perfect crime in your mind when you're writing about it?
Okay, so I know everybody thinks right away, because there's a light me up in the song. They
Yeah.
obviously think it's about
You're burning,
extracurricular activities and
right,
paraphernalia.
you're burning
And
down a building or
yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah, or just smoking the funny tobacco. Like
Oh,
that's
that too. Yep, that's
that's
true.
a lot of people like. Oh yeah, it's about, yeah. All the people are like, oh yeah, it's about that, right? And especially perfect crime and whatnot.
Yeah,
I like to write most of the time a little vague. If the song means
sure.
that to you and that's why you like it, great. I don't say no, it's not about that. You can't. No, if that's what makes you feel good, singing along to it, you think it's about that, good for you. The song was written about the first time my fiance now had just touched me, and the rush I felt going through my body,
Sure.
and I was like, oh boy, this is new and interesting for me as a feeling. So I was like, this is okay. And it's like the perfect crime, I guess, comes into as like, you know it just surprised me, right? It was the perfect crime for her. She snatched me up. you know
Yeah. I thought that the interesting thing when I was, reading the press notes that they sent to me about everybody in the band and the song, that you and John actually hadn't really talked in like 15 years. But he's like, oh, but I know who's going to be the perfect guy for this. I think that's sort of great that you guys stayed in touch, but you hadn't really talked in a while. And then it was like, great, let's just work on this. Probably, when you've known somebody that long, I guess, you kind of don't miss a beat, no pun intended.
Yeah, no, really. Well, John and I always got along. Like I said, from college when we used to hang out, and like he would strum a guitar and we'd mess around, coming up with songs, and even if they were just silly, because you're in college and drinking between classes. But like I said, then he filmed our video and we did some shows together. But it had at least been 15 years I hadn't spoken to him. That first video with my old band.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of, so obviously, if people want to find it, there is an Outliars, and it is spelled Liars. You can find it,
Yeah.
just a video on YouTube, and you can find the song everywhere. And there's the Instagram and Facebook are both Outliers band. So you have this great song. What is next? Have you guys already worked on more songs? Are you planning on working on more songs? Do you want to put out an EP or an album, or just more songs? What's sort of the rest of 2021 look like for Outliers?
So this gave me the bug back after being a little bit, distant for like 2, 3 years. It gave me the bug back, and I was like, this is actually a nice challenge too, because it's different from what I had always done in the past, which was that heavier rock. And but even with the heavier rock, I always enjoy like a nice pop melody. So I got bit by the bug again, and like I'm like sending riffs to John, and then he's like, okay, he goes, and this is what I would put on it, and he's like doing that. Then he'd send me stuff. I go, this is great. This is gonna be a ballad. He goes, how do you know? I said, I feel it, man. Don't worry how I know. Like we joke around. So we've got a bunch of stuff, but it was so difficult because we've had a curfew for the longest time, and like the curfew was just lifted now. So hopefully we're going to get into a jam room, but it's like, every time you have an idea or you want to build upon the existing idea. It's like, okay, you got to scrap everything and re-record and now send the tracks again. Okay, Max,
Yeah.
can you record the drums to this? Okay, I'll try and record the drums to this. I have ideas about restructuring the song and adding a part. Okay, bring it back to John. And I'm like, okay, this was easier when they contacted me at the end when it was done, you know?
When they'd already done everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but I like being part of the process, you know, because there's like, okay, what
Sure.
if we put this part there too, you know? But we've got a bunch of riffs. We got one almost completed, or like, well, I'll say 50% of the way done.
Hmm.
And but we want to put on more songs. We had a lot of fun, you know. Will it be all the same members? If they're interested. I mean, I know John and Max, the three of us, we're in, and the other guys, if they have time, you know, they're more than welcome.
Sure.
They both they did answer, and they said, yeah, just send us the stuff. So if they're interested, we'd love to keep it together, and I'd love to go and do a live show with this, you know.
Yeah, I think that and I think that that is just at the moment, us speaking at the beginning of June, that is one of the bigger differences between the U.S. and Canada. I mean, it's still not everywhere here in the U.S., but there are people that have been able to play. Like Sammy Hagar did a whole tour of Florida. Bands can play all over Texas for months now. I live in Los Angeles now. They tell us we're going to be able to have concerts at the end of the summer. I'll believe it when I see it. But so we're starting to hear that.
Yeah.
But in terms of up in Canada, what you're saying, like they only just lifted the curfew, so you guys are having trouble, getting together just to play and jam, much less actually put on a show, at least in the immediacy, right? I think we lost Danny for a second there because he's frozen. So those that are watching, you can see him, and so it looks like he's thinking about answering the question that I asked him. But there he is. So it just seems like playing a show isn't something that's going to happen too soon, right? Yeah, we lost you for a minute there. Yeah. Yeah.
I know I lost you too.
Yeah.
I don't believe. I mean, some places are already, because right now the terraces of bars and restaurants are open, so there already is
Yeah.
some live music going on, which is encouraging. I like seeing that.
Sure. Yeah.
But I can't wait for real concerts to happen with full bands. And I'm an original music guy. I can appreciate a cover band. It's great, but give me live music of original music. I love that.
Yeah.
It's such a thrill to get a response to something you wrote, you poured your heart and soul into.
Yeah, there's something great about hearing a song for the first time, hearing new music from a band you already like. That can be fun, but discovering that great opening band, which doesn't happen as much as it used to, because bands will usually tour with other established bands, but when it does happen, you're like, oh my god, this band is great. There is something really exciting about that, and it's just like, wait, who are these guys, and it actually gets you to really pay attention when a band's great. So yeah, hopefully you guys get to record more music, and it seems like that's definitely going to happen no matter what, and before too long you get to do some live shows. So now comes the inevitable question about the spelling of the band name, which when I was creating the link, I realized I spelled it wrong, because it's spelled Outliars, as in liar, not telling the truth. Where does the name come from? When did you guys come up with that as the name for this project?
When we were decided that we were going to go to studio so I can record the vocals, I'm chatting with John one night. I'm like, dude, like we're gonna have to find a name for this band, and he's like, well, we're not really a band. Let's call it a project, because of bands, they get together and play. Like, okay, I like that. We'll call it a project for now. And being of Italian descent, him as well, and the drummer Max, all of Italian descent. I'm like, let's call this like prosciutto and melon, like the typical Italian like appetizer, at the Italian events. And he's like, yeah, he goes, well, we need a more serious name than I think we do. And he goes, I like how all this is done. So he just kind of researched. He researched like remote, other words for remote, like done from afar, and all these crazy words, and outlying, is the word. The definition is remotely or far from a center. So yeah, the center would be the name of the band, and everybody was in their different areas doing it. And so he said the outline. And he goes, "What about the outlier?" And I'm like, "Yeah, And he's like, "He was outliers, but we'll spell like as if we're liars." I'm like, "Okay, got me. He got me there, And I go, "But we need a capital L." I said, "I'll give you the credit for the band name." I go, "But it's going to be outlier, but the L is going to be capital, but it's all going to be one word."
I like it. Yeah, it's definitely a cool name, and it is Outliers Band on Instagram and Facebook, and there is a YouTube channel, and that's where everybody can find it. Danny, because when we started, we were talking about Motley Crue. I figure I want to ask you, what do you think? What do you think is the best Motley Crue album, beginning to end? There's a couple of albums that I feel like are half really good. But what was as a kid and even all these years later, which one, if you're going to put it on, you're going to listen to it all the way through? It's another one of those delays, which, this happens to me a lot, that I cause the delay, but I feel like it's not on my end for once. There's only so many Motley Crue albums. Maybe we can try and guess what it might be. It's funny because Danny's actually trying to connect another way from another device. But I don't know that I can actually add it. And there you are. We did lose you again, and then you came back in. That's all right. Thank you for coming back. It was literally
It kicked me out.
It kicked you out. Oh, because you got frozen. Well, I was just asking you one last question on the way out, which was, I don't know if you heard my question, which is,
I heard Motley Crue. That's it.
Yeah. Which one? Yeah. That you thought was great back in the day when you were a kid and you listened to it, and even now you still have to listen to it all the way through. What would you say is your favorite Motley Crue record?
Oof. I'm gonna say Dr. Feelgood. It's I guess the only album that every single song from beginning to end was absolutely amazing. I'll give it to the songwriting, definitely. Like they were all sober. That's when they all got sober for that album. Songwriting, and then Bob Rock taking it to the next level, which was, he changed sound engineering at that time period. But from beginning to end, you don't have to skip any of the songs. Dr. Feelgood is my favorite for that reason.
Yeah, I think that the couple albums that preceded it, both Theater of Pain and Girls, 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 there's a little bit of throwaway stuff on there, I think. And it also shows just how mature they got, just one lyrically, but then also just musically. There's something I love about Too Fast for Love, but it's a little raw. I mean, those are great songs. But Dr. Feelgood, I think, is their most accomplished albums. And really, I mean, it's sort of, not that the band didn't do a lot after that, but that was kind of the last hurrah for them in that heyday before Vince left and was replaced by John Corabi and then came back. I think that it's really sort of like it's like that great run that basically is. I think Too Fast for Love's 81. I think Dr. Feelgood's 89. So it's like they had a great run of the 80s. And still did some good stuff after that, but that's definitely the peak, and it's hard to disagree. Well, Danny, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, and I love talking about your history about this song, and I really look forward to more Outliers music before too long.
Oh, perfect, man. I so appreciate you having me on the show, and we're trying to get some stuff out there. Now that there's no more curfew, we are definitely going to try and get together because it works a lot better when you're in a room together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think getting to collaborate like that will be better. And like I said, it's at Outliers Band, Instagram and Facebook. Our guest has been Danny Rossi. Thanks again for your time, Danny. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.
You too.